Yo, what's up, dude? Okay, I've had better openings. What's up? How you doing? How you doing? This thing on? Yeah, it's on. Get the 3120 out again. And I'm running TH2. So, it's been a crazy busy week. Again, I wanted to reply to everyone's comments, but I just haven't had a chance. In fact, it's the first time I've had the chance to really sit down and play guitar at all in like the last week. It's just been one of those weeks. But well, that can go on all night. No, you shouldn't crack your knuckles. They say it causes arthritis, but it actually doesn't cause arthritis. It does, though, cause weaker hands. That actually has been proven. So, does make your hands a little weak. So, I don't know what the reduction is, 20%, 30%, but there's strength loss from cracking knuckles. But it's a bad habit to get into. Gotta admit, though, that's pretty awesome. Just okay, so I've been got a lot of people who ask me over and over and over again, how do I hook my guitar up to a computer? How do I get that same sound? So I thought I'd do a little video on that, and I'll write up some notes, maybe make a PDF you can get down there in the description. So as everyone knows, or maybe you don't know, I run through computer software. My efforts to mic up the Viper have been horribly wrong. I actually got a semi-okay sound, not from the USB. The USB out was actually had quite a bit of latency to it. I got a much better sound using just a straight-up quarter-inch out, which is pretty lame, you know. But this is, I'm running into a mixer, a Tascam digital mixer. It's a Tascam TM-D1000, something you can pick up on eBay for about, I don't know, 100 to 300 bucks, depending on who's selling it. But once you get the mixer, that's only half the equation. You still have to get the sound from the audio. So I plug my guitar straight into the mixer. I'm in channel 1. The mic is in channel 2. And because it's digital, I can just set up the routes. So I can say, I want the mic to go straight out to the monitor out. And then I run a stereo cable out to the camera. Right? An RCA to 1/8 inch jack. And the camera has an audio input on the side. So, and if you've seen my video, My Rig, but I guess the video is so old now, I'm just continually bombarded with questions about it. So make another video about how my rig is set up. So, because it's a digital mixer, I can say, channel 1, I want you to go to the direct out. Well, the direct out goes to the computer. That's the direct out. Channel 2, which is the mic, I say, run to left, right. I could also say, run to sub 1, 2, or sub 3, 4, because it has a couple of sub mixes that I could run. But just to keep it simple, you know, I just run it directly out to the left-right. I actually do run a sub-mix out to the 3-4 because I ran out of monitor output. It's a long story. Ran out of monitor outputs, had to run the sub out, and I run the sub out into my, I have a headphone amplifier. I used to run the headphones directly out of the mixing board, but now I have buddies come over. Off camera, you can't see it. I have a electronic drum set. It's an amalgamation of an Alesis drum set and a Yamaha drum set. I took 2 small drum sets and put it into one bigger drum set. I run that all out into the computer, and I trigger Superior Drummer, which if you want the best drums out there, it really is Superior Drummer. There's no comparison. They're the best drums out in the market. They're totally worth the money. They charge for it and then some. But so I run through a digital mixer, and then I run into a card, and I use a TDIF cable, which basically looks like a printer cable, right? It's a big socket, bunch of pins on one end, bunch of pins on the other. You know, it looks like a serial cable, actually bigger than a serial cable. It looks like a printer cable, right? It's a big wide socket cable, you know, that would run, not USB. We're talking old school printer that's got like, I don't know, 40 pins in it, or at least 25 pins that runs out, and it goes into the computer. Now, the computer has to run a special card. The matching card that goes with the Tascam. It's called the PCI 822. Don't look for it. It was discontinued in 2002. It's like 11 years like off the market. I bought the mixer because they were changing their whole format, and they dumped it out. The mixer was like $12.99 when it came out, and Guitar Center had them for $3.99. They were just blowing them out. And my wife bought it for me for Christmas, which is why I married her. And then I went out to Mars, if you remember Mars Music, the short-lived super mega music store, and I bought the PCI 822. And Tascam, I don't know, they're just terrible with their drivers. They came out with the product, and the driver in the box didn't work. It was just awful. It would blue screen nonstop, and then I had to go like online and download the latest driver just to get it to work in Windows 98. And then it took them like 2 years. I want to say it's like 2003 or 2004. They finally came out with a good driver for Windows, or they basically had a beta driver that was even their best driver for Windows 2. They're like Windows 2000 and Windows XP driver. It was like a joke. They just the worst development out there. So I'm stuck at 32-bit. I can't go to 64-bit because they've dropped development on it, and you can't get the latest 64-bit hardware driver. And that's the one thing you can't mix with 64-bit. You need a 64-bit driver if you want to run it in a 64-bit system. So I'm capped at, you know, 4 gigs of RAM, which can only see 3.25 gigs, blah, 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 blah. And so I'm running, you know, an Intel i3 system, SSD hard drive, 4 gigs of RAM, which I can only see 3.25, and I run 2 main software packages. I actually have a few different ones, but really the 2 I run the most are TH2, which is what you're hearing right now. Or I run Guitar Rig 5, but I kind of like TH2. So I really like the software. I think it's very dynamic. Just a little bit of distortion in there. Just that little bit of crunch. That. I also run Guitar Rig 5. Guitar Rig 5 has more features and I think it has a better interface. But I think for pure quality of sound, I'm still TH2 all the way. So you're going to need software. There's actually a bunch of free software out there. Like none that's coming to mind, but someone had given me some links. Jeez, I can't think of the name of it right now. If you remember the name, write it in the comments. But there's a couple of great. Is it Poolin? Is that the one I'm thinking of? The Poolin cab, and there's a couple of different heads that they make. But you'll need a VST interface. So here's the deal. You need some way to get the guitar in the computer. So you can get like a PreSonus or an M-Audio or a Line 6. You need something to get that audio in there. You want something with what we call a high Z input. High Z stands for high impedance, and versus low impedance, which is a microphone. So there's these different impedance settings, values for different instruments, for microphones, line. You need high impedance to get the best possible sound. And even though I don't have it on the mixer, I can adjust with the trim pot to get the right amount of volume and work with it that way. But I just get the high impedance, or it'll say instrument in. That's just a cute way of saying the same thing. That's step number one, high impedance if you're running a guitar. Number two, you have to have, on a PC anyway, ASIO drivers. That's capital A, capital S, capital I, capital O. ASIO drivers. And that's a standard developed by Steinberg. Steinberg or Steinberger? Steinberg? Steinberger. Anyway, Steinberg or Steinberger. That they released out to the public. It's just a generic standard now that you can license for like nothing. So ASIO is just a standard out there. The thing about ASIO is that back when we had Windows 98, the hardware driver could directly access the software could directly access hardware. And that caused a lot of problems because when it went belly up, it caused a blue screen. It caused the system to just halt. It was a problem. So when they came out with Windows XP, really started Windows 2000, Windows XP, they created the HAL, or the hardware abstraction layer. And that was a little go-between between the software and the hardware. So if a piece of software shit the bed, the hardware didn't get tumbled down. It didn't crash the entire system. It wasn't perfect, but it was a huge improvement over the prior system. Problem with that is now you've got to go through this extra layer of processing, and that creates what we call latency, or delay, really. So it's like you hit it and you don't hear it instantly like that. It shows up later, like some bad Japanese movie. So you got to have ASIO drivers if you want this instant, when I hit it, it comes out. And that's also a function of setting the driver up correctly. ASIO drivers use a panel that has buffers, and buffers come in 64 bytes, 100, well, really samples, 64 samples, 128 samples, 256 samples. You can see they keep doubling, 512 samples. My Tascam can go 64, 128, 256, or 512. Some other products can go to 1,000, 24, 2048. They can really get up there. The bigger the sample, the easier it is for the computer to process it, but you'll get more delay, you'll get more latency. The lower the sample buffers, like if I put mine all the way down to 64, Guitar Rig 5 doesn't really like it. It crackles and has dropouts because it doesn't like so few sample buffers, and my CPU can't keep up. I have an i3. Maybe if I put an absolutely screaming like i7 in there, or the absolute top of the line like AMD running like 4 gigahertz or something like that, like something like super powerful, even at 64 samples, maybe Guitar Rig 5 would work fine. I don't know. I'd have to check it out. So it's really a function between CPU and the setting you use in your driver. So it's like putting it back. So the fewer the samples, the faster your processor has to work to keep up with it. The larger the sample buffer, the system doesn't get taxed as quickly. So that is definitely something to consider when you're setting up your system. If you have an older system, you're going to have to set those buffers a little bit higher. If you find you're getting dropouts, or if you're getting crackles, it's because your buffer setting is too low. As far as like DirectX or Windows driver model, that's older technology, and DirectX is really made for gaming, and they can synchronize in other ways. So when you're talking about real-time audio processing, it's really ASIO or bust. It really is. It's just not ready for prime time, and so many people email me and they're saying, I plugged my guitar into my laptop and it's not working. Yeah, the DSP in that's like a Realtek. Like it's like basically a bunch of hardware on a chip, so it's not like real hardware like my system has, where they have dedicated processors to it. It's very much like a software on a chip that sort of emulates hardware to a large degree. It's pretty bad. It's really not that robust at all. It's certainly not robust enough. They make a product out there called ASIO for all, which allows ASIO drivers. It provides an ASIO driver for the Realtek chips and laptops, and people tell me, and I've actually tried a little bit myself, that it works. In fact, I was trying something out, it absolutely required ASIO drivers, and I put ASIO for all on there just to check it out, and it worked. It wasn't the fastest, but it was usable, it was manageable. So, when you're working on your PC, you got to get, 1, a decent interface, 2, set your drivers to the correct amount, and 3, and this is key, especially in TH2, up on the left, the top, right after the TH2 signature badge up there, the TH2 sign, it says master, then live, and then inlev. That inlev means input level. And if you click that, it will bring up an input level adjustment dialog, and it has a big meter, and the meter starts out yellow, turns green, and then turns red. Well, you don't want to be in yellow, and you don't want to be in red. You got to be in the green zone. So you set your input. See, now when I go to single coil, I'm just barely hitting the green. Now I'm hitting the green much farther down, and even touching the red a hair. So you really have to have that really strong input, and if you don't, the sound is going to suffer. It really does. It really sounds weak. So that's about it. I wanted to just talk a little bit about setting your system up for using a computer. One, you got to have a decent computer. I'd get an i3 or an i5 or an i7. If you're going to get AMD, make sure you get the latest chip, because they license those SIMD instructions from Intel, and you'll want the latest one, like SSE4 or whatever the whatever those latest instructions. There always seem to be one generation behind Intel, because Intel writes the instructions and they keep the latest instructions for themselves. So that's a key. Two, you got to have an ASIO compatible hardware device, something like a PreSonus is a good one. Certainly for the money, they seem to be one of the better values out there. You can get an ASIO compatible device for, I don't know, $100 to $150 that would connect through USB. Audio makes some devices, but pay attention, because some of their lower-end devices aren't ASIO. They're just DirectX or WMD, Windows driver model, and not as good. You want that ASIO. And then the UX series, I'm pretty sure it's UX by Line 6. They make the little guitar tone port plug-in. Their latest two models, there's one with the meters that's about like 150 or 180. Then there's one for like 99 that doesn't have the meters. I've actually tried that $99 one on a laptop, and it was actually a pretty old laptop, and it worked. And it comes with Pod Farm, which is Mets and Mets. I'm not crazy about Pod Farm. I think TH2 and Guitar Rig 5 blow it away in terms of sound. That's just my opinion. Your mileage may vary. So, those are really the key. People keep telling me what I use. I use antiquated technology because I don't have a budget right now for updating it. So I'm going to be, using this really until I absolutely can't stand the 4 gig limit anymore, which I'm getting there. But for right now, as long as I can live with 3.25 gigs of recognizable RAM, I'm good. If I have to go 64-bit and get, 8, I'm running 16 gigs on my system here and my system at the office. So, more RAM is good, but I don't know that I absolutely need it on this, except when I'm running some of the soft synths, like Omnisphere would want it, and, it's certainly a Superior Drummer would love to use it, because it would buffer all those samples up into RAM, and it wouldn't have to do as much hard disk. But I'm running an SSD drive. If you're not familiar with SSD, solid-state drives, they're a million times better than the old regular drives, but the cost is up there. Very expensive on a per gigabyte cost versus a per gigabyte cost on a standard drive, a 7200 RPM drive. Probably a happy medium would be get a 10,000 RPM drive with standard versus an SSD. But if you want a real fast hard drive and almost like instant speed up, SSD is the way to go. I was blown away by how awesome SSD is, and wound up putting one in the family system, and it really sped it up. So that's about it, guys. Alright, I'll be back a lot sooner next time. I thought things were slowing down for me last week. I was like, woo, I'm all done, woo, and then it was like, no, you're not. I got totally busy again. But that's okay. The good news is we're getting a roof in like 2 weeks. Woo, new roof. Finally. Finally. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait. because the old one's looking pretty bad. We have the ugliest roof on the street by far, so be awesome. But now, of course, we waited so long. They're getting busy. It's the springtime. All right, guys. As always, rock on.